Hello, hello. It's Lisa Kneller here with Lisa Kneller Coaching and Unstuck, the Road to Reinvention. And I'm here with a special guest tonight. I'm so glad you're here. I hope you're watching. If you're not watching, now you might be watching the recording later. And welcome to all of you. Before we get started, I just want to say that I have a little post on my Facebook page. This is just a little announcement. I'm doing a little weight loss project for me, and I'm looking for some people who want to join me. So if you are wanting to lose 8 pounds in the month of September, look for my post on my Facebook page and then DM me if that's something that you're interested in, because I definitely don't want to do it alone, and it's going to be a lot more fun with more people. So that's just an FYI. Okay. Tonight, we are going to talk about time management. And I think there's going to be like something about it's not time that we manage, it's ourselves. So we'll talk about that. But my special guest is Carla Reeves. She is a life coach. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about her. Known for her compassionate, direct, and truth-telling candor. She is known for that. But for over a decade, ambitious leaders have been relying on Carla to call out their blind spots, challenge their thinking, and expand their perspectives. Carla believes in ditching the illusion that life will be great someday in the future, and teaches leaders how to wake up their thinking to create and live a juicy, rich, meaningful, everyday life now. Carla Reeves is a coach, consultant, mentor, and is wholehearted about working with people who are ready to mess with their thinking to ignite their living. She was born and raised in a sleepy beach town in California, and now lives in Arizona on a small farm with cows and chickens and her beloved husband and boys. Welcome, Carla.
Thanks, Lisa. What an honor to be here.
Yeah, I'm so happy you're here. I want to tell everybody that Carla is my coach and has really guided me and mentored me over the last 6 months. And as a coach myself, she's really helped me to elevate my own service and coaching. And she's extraordinary. She's been in that field for a long time, and she knows her stuff. So that's one of the reasons I'm so delighted that she's joining us tonight, because I have the utmost respect for her. And she's just one of the kindest people I know. So Carla, I'm so happy you're here. And this is a show about reinvention, and that we do reinvent ourselves throughout our lives, and we go through different stages and keep reinventing ourselves. So what I'd like to know, and what I'd like for you to share, is what's your reinvention story, or the latest one, or the one with regard to how you know how to help people manage their time and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. I think there's many, right? There's many to choose from, but I think I want to go back to really kind of like my first reinvention story, because it was there that really shaped everything and the way that I sort of move through reinvention now. But it was like 20 plus years ago, after I found myself going through a divorce. And up until that point, I had been checking the boxes that I thought led to that so-called successful life, and was really diligent about making everything look good on the outside and make everybody else happy. And everything did look good on the outside and on paper. But I woke up one day and was finally willing to admit to myself that I was empty inside. And it was that was a really pivotal time in my life to really shift the way I was doing life, because up until that point, I was looking to the external world to sort of know if I was okay and to determine my happiness. And it was quite a roller coaster. Like if things were going well, and if life was good and work was good, and I was getting the feedback that I wanted from the outer world, I felt good. But the moment any of that went away, I sort of took a dip and then had to be better and be more and please more, and on and on and on. And I really wanted to shift that. I had no idea how. but I knew in my heart there was a different way of doing life. And I really made it my mission to figure out how. And it really, for me, it started with shifting from the living for the external world to really taking care of my inner world, and the inner landscape of my life. And as I did that, which involved cleaning up my thinking and cleaning up the way I saw myself and the world around me, and on and on and on, as I cleaned up my inner world, my outer world started to look and feel different. And that was just a complete game changer for me.
So, what did you do to seek that kind of inner world? Like, how did you start to make or manifest those changes?
I still use writing as a tool in my life, but writing was a big tool for, really kind of discovering what was hanging out in my thoughts, because I had no idea up until that point that I could have say in, kind of co-create how my life is going to go and really be at the helm and have control. Like there's a lot of things that we can't control in life. And I was focused on all of those things and very frustrated trying to change people or circumstances. And when I shifted to controlling the things that I can control, like my thinking, my perspective, the way I approach things, the language that I use, that all, began to change the way I saw the world, the way I interacted with people. But writing was a huge tool in really uncovering that sort of inner landscape of my thinking and what was hanging out in there. At that time, I also went through, are you familiar with landmark education?
I've heard about it, but I'm not really familiar with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I went through Landmark, and it was really a curriculum for living your life. And that was kind of my first introduction to, like, you're not at the mercy of life or your circumstances, and that there are things you can do and things that you can control to start to shift your experience of it. But writing plays a huge role in that for me, even today.
And so Landmark is a kind of a personal development program. I read about it in Steve Hardison's book. It's not actually his book, but you know who Steve Hardison is. He's the ultimate coach.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And he was involved in that program. I think for a long time, and probably even taught in that program. So I'm curious to know if he did more, what he did there. But that's why it was like just this past week I saw that word landmark and I heard about it. So journaling and programs and things like that. So we do want to get into like time management tonight and what that is all about. But also, how did you get into coaching? How did you get into mentoring others?
So I went through this process in my own life of really, after divorce, kind of reinventing myself and deciding to no longer abandon myself. And kind of went through that process myself, went through Landmark. When it was in corporate America for like over 10 years, and I actually met my husband now in the very end of the Landmark program. And so we met inside of that program and we got married, and I left corporate America to have my first son. And about 8 months, I didn't go back. I didn't go back to work after having him. I had the opportunity to stay home, and he was about 8 months old, and I started going a little stir crazy as moms do. And I felt I had done a lot of work on myself and cleaning up that inner environment as I was describing. And I felt another kind of calling, I guess, to reinvent, because I felt myself kind of losing my sanity a little bit and getting so involved and absorbed in being a mom that I kind of was forgetting who I was. And I noticed all around me moms who were often quite miserable, and that would ripple to their children. And I felt myself slipping in that direction, and I knew I didn't want that. And again, I wasn't sure how to do it differently, but I knew in my heart there was a way. And I, kind of made it my mission to figure out how to be a happy mom. And I started writing. I felt a calling to write again. And I wrote and I wrote and I wrote. And months later, for whatever reason, because I don't usually look back at journals, I was sitting on my bed and looking back over my journal and what had happened over the last number of months. And I was just kind of floored. Like, not only had I figured out how to take better care of myself and be a happy mom, but all these other things had occurred on the pages of my journal. And I realized in that moment, like, I'm here to help people use writing as a tool to navigate their life and tap into their own inner wisdom and their spirituality and their creativity and on and on and on. And so I started a company called Sanity Journals. Did we ever talk about this?
I don't remember the company.
No.
I thought you went to work for a company, but I didn't know you started one. Okay.
Yeah, I had a company called Sanity Journals, and I did that for a number of years while my boys were little. And it was my creative outlet. And it was a way that I self-published some guided journals, and I had an online journaling lounge where people would join and write and share and kind of grow, personally. And then a company found me. I had done some speaking, and they said, "You're passionate about journaling, and so are we." And we ended up, I went to work for them a little bit. That's probably what you remember. And I went to her one day and I said, "I want to grow my business. I don't know what to do. Would you mentor me?" And she said, "I think you know what to do. I think you should go through our coaching program." And that was really my first introduction to coaching. And I had been leading like small retreats and really coaching people over their journals, but I didn't call it that. And so I did. I went through their coaching program, and the coaching was amazing. But even bigger than that, I fell in love with this idea of marrying a coach and a journal. And so that's how I became a coach. It found me.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. I forgot to tell everybody how we met. We met in a book club.
You did.
A few years ago. Yeah, a mutual friend pulled us all together, and we started reading some interesting books and started conversations. And that always leads to a little bit of journaling for me. So I love that you have been so immersed in journaling and have taught it and really understand it and what it actually does for the psyche. That is so cool. So you became a coach, and you've been coaching now. You've been an entrepreneur for over 10 years, and now you're kind of. I know that you cover all kinds of topics when you have a podcast and you have guests on your podcast, and you are a guest on podcasts. So you talk about all kinds of things, but something that's new that you're working on, a project, it has to do with time management. Can you talk a little bit about what time management is? Like, what is that? We all have 24 hours in the day, and not all of us operate the same way. So
yeah, so time became a part of my work like a number of years ago when I discovered that it was like the biggest, most often used excuse, myself included, from clients that like got in the way of them doing the things that matter most. It's like it was just always this out of I don't have time or I'm too busy. And I thought I really need to get to the bottom of like understanding this to really help people break through. And even in my own life, I am a recovering workaholic, and I was just, had this monster on my shoulder that was always just like, you need to be working all the time. And when I wasn't working, it was telling me I needed to be doing other things, and I couldn't enjoy anything. No matter where I was, I felt like I should be somewhere else or doing something else. And it was kind of this, just never felt like enough time, and there was urgency, and I didn't want to live that way any longer. And similar to the other areas of my life that I had reinvented, I wanted to reinvent this part of my life. And I knew, like everything else that I had done, it started with the inside out. And the same was true for time, that I had done all the things. I had tried all the strategies, and I had tried to be more and work harder and get more efficient. And that wasn't working or giving me any more quality of life. And I knew there had to be a different way. And so I started to, again, look at what's the foundation of time, what's my inner dialogue and the story I'm telling about time on a daily basis. And it's really, I like to think of it like you have a relationship with time, and it's one you ought to look at, because for me it was like an adversary, and it just, like, it wasn't on my team. I was frustrated with it all the time because I never had enough. And it felt like it was just kind of running my life, and I had no power or control, and it felt terrible. So I really started doing that work myself, and then started teaching it to other people, because time is our most precious commodity, right? Like, it's so precious. And if we can really get in the driver's seat of taking a different approach to it, we can start to carve out our life in a different way to really make time for what matters, instead of living into someday, because someday may never come.
Yeah, I've struggled with this issue too. And as a person who represents a university and enrolls students into programs, I often hear that as an objection. Oh, I just don't have time. I don't have time for school. But they want to go because they've inquired about going. So it's something that they want to do, but they just don't know, like, they just don't see themselves having the time. And so I always ask them, well, like, what do you think it would take per week? Like, how many hours do you think it would take to do some homework and take one class at a time? And then they're allowed to think, they think about it. But I think, like you said, ultimately what it comes down to is, what do you really want? And you have to dig inward. You have to go inside to figure that out, right? You have to do some of that contemplation and really figuring out what you want.
Well, and it's true. You definitely have to do that. And I think that you need to really know what you're committed to, because otherwise everything's just going to pull you all over the place. And but one of the things that, like, when you think of time management, a lot of times we think of things like, when you say, like, people are like, oh yeah, I know I waste time. It's like, sitting and watching Netflix, or, whatever, on Instagram, or, and, like, those may be places that you're wasting time, but those aren't the real time robbers. They're these sneaky blind spots that are often connected to ways of behaving that we learned when we were very young, in order to get value or get connection or get love, and those are the places that I like to work with people on, because when you can discover those places, like, just for example, like an inability to say no, like, for some people, like, a lot of people struggle with that. I did too. Or I worked with a client who had, like, she learned at a very young age to be very responsible. And her mom taught her also to be very generous. And so she had this generous heart. She had a huge leadership position, and she, like, was taking responsibility for everything, putting her life out kind of on hold until retirement. But it was this responsibility gene that she had that was, like, getting in the way of everything. And once we were able to, like, pull that apart and show her where, she was maybe upholding roles that she didn't even need to uphold anymore, that weren't relevant, and that I think she also had to grapple with, like, could she leave a legacy and start to have a little more of life balance for herself? And in her mind, she couldn't. And so it was like a deal breaker. Like, I'm just going to leave my legacy, and then I'll have a life. And we were able to work together to really dismantle some of those old, outdated ways of doing things. And those are the true time robbers. I mean, you can harness so much time and energy from places like that, like an inability to say no, or just over responsibility, people pleasing, all of those. Sometimes they're blind spots.
Yeah. And, there are many of you out there who have struggled with this, who have trouble saying no. And that's a whole boundary thing, and understanding that it's okay to say no and to take some time for yourself. But what about this, Carla? Like, what about energy? I was talking to a coach one time, and I was dealing with, like, I wanted more time. I wanted to figure out how to manage my time better. And she said, "Well, how's your sleep?" And I said, "It's okay." I mean, it could be better. She's like, "Yeah, but like, that's so important. Like, sleep is so important. And what are you doing to prepare for sleep? And how much are you getting? And is it quality sleep? And that kind of thing." Is that something that you've run across, just like managing energy?
Yeah, for sure. I remember the first time I heard of this idea of managing your energy instead of your time. And it was like just a huge light bulb went off, because I think that really gave me freedom to start to really think about time management differently, of like managing your energy. And I know for myself, I'm a morning person. And so like morning time, if I can, adjust my schedule so that I work on like, deep thinking projects or do my coaching calls in the morning, that's where I have my best energy. And so if you can start to tailor some of the activities during your day and match that to your energy, I think that's an amazing way.
Cool, cool. Any other tips to better manage our time before we get into time camp, which we're going to
Yeah.
tell people about?
Well, I think just to kind of recap, one is just start to pay attention to what you're thinking about time, like what you're telling yourself. Because if you're for like I was, if you're constantly telling yourself like I don't have enough time, or my to-do list never ends, or like those kind of things, you're creating your reality with those dialogues in your head. And one of the other part of that is start to pay attention to how you talk about time and how you describe it to others. Like, one of the things I did was I just stopped saying that I was busy. I stopped saying I'm busy. I don't use that anymore. And that alone was a game changer. Like I will say, like things are full. I might say things are full, or there's a lot of things on my plate, but ultimately I know that, just like those students you were talking about, like that I'm choosing. If I say I don't have time, what that really means is that's not a priority. Because if
Mm-hmm.
it is a priority, you would make time, and you do make time for the things that really matter. And so that's number two. Your thinking, your language, pay attention, start to pay attention to it, and just change it ever so slightly and see what happens. In the book, The Big Leap, they talk about Einstein time. And it's this whole kind of framework of like, you are the source of time. And so it's kind of like a framework to play inside of. But if you just start to talk to yourself differently about time and start to realize that you actually are making choices all the time for how you spend your time. And so if you don't like that, then you have the power to change that. And then third, just a time management strategy, because I know people love those and I love those too, is something I use all the time is I use timers to kind of like create a pocket to work inside of. And I'm often just amazed at what I can get done in a 15-minute, timer. Or if you're procrastinating on something, set a timer for 5 minutes. Like you can start something and get in for 5 minutes, and you'll be amazed at what happens. I
You know,
learned. Yeah, go ahead.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say I learned that from years ago. I was making dinner and cooking rice, and I had set the timer for 15 minutes or whatever. And I was procrastinating on a project, and I thought, I'm just going to sit down and see how much I can get done until the rice is done. And I literally finished a project that I thought was going to take me like 2 or more hours. And so,
What?
yeah.
That's funny. I have a friend who does a lot of journaling, and she gave me the idea of when you don't have a lot of time, you can set your timer for 5 minutes. And what she would do is she would like take one word in her journal. She would pick a word for the day, and she would set her timer for 5 minutes, and she would just start writing just on that word, and that was a eye opener for me, because I was like, wow, I could do that. 5 minutes, it could seem like a pretty long time if you really need some time to think about that word, but like it also can go fast, and you can still get a lot written. It can be productive. So
a lot could happen in 5 minutes. I think that's a great way to start writing.
Yeah. And I use my timer all day long to remind me of things. I set it for 30 minutes to rest. Or today I had a project that I got done in my lunch hour. I can't believe what I did in my lunch hour. It was kind of extraordinary. So I won't go on about that. But tell us, you have an event coming up called Time Camp. Tell us about Time Camp. What is that?
We do. So Time Camp, kind of a funny story, but Kathy Deco is my partner on this, and I had invited her on the podcast, and we decided she came on once, and then I invited her back, and we decided to do a series on productivity and time because we both love it so much. And so we were in the middle of that series, and all of a sudden had this inspired idea of like, Time Camp, we got to create Time Camp. And so Kathy is a systems and process guru, and I'm a mindset coach, and we're bringing together kind of a very holistic approach to time so that you can really like build from the foundation up, starting with your mindset, building that really strong, healthy mindset and relationship with time. And then uncovering some of those time robbers that I was talking about. And then on top, and then she's going to fold in the to-do lists and how to prioritize and how to do your calendar differently. And so we are so excited, and it's all kind of wrapped in this idea of camp. And so we've got a really fun approach to this. Is not your ordinary time management snooze fest. We're bringing a lot of candid, casual fun to the whole topic, and it's going to be very interactive and hands-on, and it'll take place virtually over like 4 different Tuesdays. So it's like a 4-part workshop starting in September.
Oh, it's on Tuesdays?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have a time?
It's from 11 to 1, and it starts on the September 14th. So it's the 14th, the 21st, the 28th, and then the 5th of October.
Okay. And where can people find more information about Time Camp?
Yeah, you can go to my website, which is carlareeves.com, and it's /time-camp, or you can click on kind of the work with me area, and there's a little button for Time Camp.
Okay. And then below the video on Facebook, we'll type that in.
Okay.
I'll add that in.
Cool.
Yeah. And where else can people find you? Let's talk about Differently, your podcast, for a minute.
Yeah. So I started a podcast in January called Differently. And it's really, the premise behind it is that when we're willing to show up differently in the little tiny moments of our lives, that magic can happen. And in relationships, in life, when you just, I think sometimes we think about personal growth or development like these big swooping changes, or when we're stuck or in a state of reinvention, it's like it can feel like these big massive changes need to happen. And I like to think about it like in moments when you just start to shift and do differently in the little moments of your life. Over time, those ripple to the larger changes that you desire. And so I interview people and I do solo episodes, and it's a whole lot of fun. You'll have to come on.
That would be fun.
Yeah.
Any place else that people can find you, or anything else you want to share?
I think my website, and then Instagram, Carla S. Reeves, and LinkedIn as well. Same handle. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't know about y'all, but this has been very enlightening to me. Just learning that you can think differently about time and using your words differently, paying attention to how you're spending your time and what you're thinking and saying. Words are extremely powerful. I mean, you know, when you speak words, you're speaking life, and so I think it's really good to pay attention to what you're saying. Um, Carla, thank you so much for being with us tonight. I really, really appreciate your being here and sharing your wisdom. And we'll do this again sometime. I'd really like to. We'll pick a different topic
Yeah.
because there are so many. And I don't know if you've ever seen Michael Neal's obstacle course, but there are 9 obstacles. And he tackles each one of them with the 3 principles, and it's pretty fascinating. So I'm pretty sure that his view on time is very similar to yours. So anyway, everybody have a great night. Thanks for joining us. You can find me here on Facebook or lisanellercoaching.com. Or if you want to reinvent your life, you can go to reinventionlifecoach.com. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us. Thank you, Carla.
Thank you, Lisa.